Thank you. Welcome you all. Actually, this is the first time that I'm using something in front of me because my team said I should just to make it very simple and just to read out so that it doesn't take too long. But before I just do it, you might be surprised that we have relatively more speakers rather than the audience. This is the same cases for everywhere. We did that several years to do the kind of clean cooking or even the clean cooling. We wanted to do all kinds of deep dive workshop and everything from the energy access perspective, but still we're not attracting that many people. From the ADB side, it is clear because it has to be demand driven. So we are doing mostly on the sovereign aspects, and then the government is also not aware too much about the issue in terms of energy access. Now it's getting a little better, that I know, and we are having this again, this e-cooking, so to say, the e-cooking or clean cooking deep dive workshop this year as well, because we want to continue. So, having said that, on behalf of the ADB and Asian Development Bank, and also energy sector, we have this norm. So all energy sector before the norm, which was last year, I think it was June last year or July last year, we had a new structure, new operating model, we call it. So before energy, it was a regional breakdown. Now it's all energy is in one sector group. So it's led by the Senior Sector Director, Priyanta. He could not open this today because he had to open some other things, other sessions. So, but so we are doing that. We welcome you all, and then of course co-organize SE4. We've been doing since about 3-4 years. We are doing joint collaboration, not only in the e-cooking or something, but we've been doing a lot of the EDX, energy access perspective. And of course that, I would like to welcome you, all the speakers. I mean, our long friend, Director Hongpeng Liu from the UNESCAP, Michelle Halak from the World Bank, ESMAP. It's the first time that you're coming here because we wanted to do something with the World Bank, ESMAP since last year or a year before, but not in the e-cooking arena, but some other things that we are collaborating with the World Bank ASMA, but we would like to have, because I didn't even know that there was some e-cooking, that's special team, on that one. So, welcome Michelle here. And then first time was Simon Batchelor from MEX, from UK. Actually, that is the one that we have a different, arrangement with the MEX. Some of them claims that they've been discussed, but I never did any joint collaboration with the MEX. It's the first time that I'm having formal speaker from MEX here. And Bastien Twene, is it okay? From SNB. And also welcome all our audience here. And thank you for attending this deep dive workshop on electrifying cooking, innovative approaches and business model for Asia and the Pacific. This year it is 19th ASAP, which I'm overseeing that again, but we are doing that. This is the most, actually the biggest event in ADB. So we have about 1,500 registration, but you see that there are hardly anyone. But anyway, the focus on this year that we've been doing all kinds of awareness building, where challenges and issues, but this year we wanted to specify that, actually how we can really accelerate the transitioning to clean energy and ensure energy security at affordable price. So this time that, we don't know what's going to happen to the next year, which is theme, but we would like to really come up with some of the actions. So this deep dive workshop is that, we would like to get more technical aspects as well, all the views from the various organization institutes, And then, we'll come out with, jointly some real action there. So, we are considering of having a pilot project jointly, all have different roles from the different organizations, but we would like to have that one. So while Asia and the Pacific, as I mentioned, that made a considerable progress in realizing their SDG goals, especially in access to electricity. However, the access to clean cooking is still lagging far behind, which is about 62% of the developing Asia's population still have no access to clean cooking. So which includes not only the e-cooking, but clean cooking overall, which is about 1.5 billion, but we are taking, and over which 1.3 billion still rely on traditional use of the biomass. If we have to transition to clean energy, we definitely need to look into this energy access perspective, in particular in the clean cooking, to close this gap. So, we've been doing all kinds of the, clean energy development, clean energy technology deployment on, most on the supply side. And we are looking at, and then we still have a lagging some challenges in terms of the energy security with the clean energy technology itself, but we've been doing that. So, mostly we were looking at the electricity from the power sector, but if we look at some of the overall energy sector, that, it is still supply challenges. As you probably know that we have about 4.7 billion portfolio this year in energy, which we picked up this year. Because of during the pandemic, it went down to about 2.3 billion, our portfolio. And then now we are, by end of this year, we are expecting about 4.7 billion portfolio investment. And from there, about 50% is on the transmission and distribution line, innovations there, all this kind of things, but T&D is the one that which we are looking at, which is massive in terms of the electricity, in terms of the, so to say, energy electrifying this still, and then provide us sufficient reliable electricity. And also T&D, we are deploying that is a lot of them. We are using the innovative technology, digitalization technology to advance the, so to say, advanced technology to, especially monitoring and all this from the supply side energy efficiency. And then we are doing a lot of them for the penetration of the renewable technology, because so far, of course, it's different in the certain region, former like a central west, we call that region is still so far, it requires a lot of the, so to say, rehabilitation or expansion of the old transmission line, which is more than 30, 40 years. And then even the other transmission, the grid system is still, the existing one is about maximum 10% is the renewable penetration. So it requires, given that all these goals that, that all our DMCs are setting, that, to increase promoting the renewable energy, that will not be able to transfer. So that's why we are looking at very much on the T&D. The rest is the clean energy technology. We're doing the renewable technology, as we know. And then also we are focusing pretty much now on the demand side energy efficiency. So to the certain extent, why I'm saying that is this clean cooking is the part of the energy access in terms of SDG goal, but also we have to look at not only the promoting the technology side, but also we have to look at in the demand side energy efficiency aspects as well. So even if everybody can say that easily that yeah, we can bring the clean kind of a coke stove or technology like that, but if that consumes a lot more electricity than afterwards, that it comes out different outcomes. So that's why I just want to say that. So and then also in that ADB we declared it, President, that this is the climate bank. So we have to. ADB is committed to invest in building resilient and empower the communities using cleaner technologies. The deployment of clean cooking solutions is also aligned with our ADB's energy policy, which is that supposed to go into the review from this year. So we should work on, our team should look at it, to slowly look it into that, because after 5 years that we have to go through the energy policy review, which also supports the universal access to reliable and affordable energy access while promoting low carbon transition in the region. In this workshop, our speakers will share the current status of the clean cooking in the region and recent developments in accessing the financing and innovative approaches for implementing e-cooking projects, including the use of the behavioral change approach. From that one, I'm expecting pretty much from the the SMAP, because we are looking at that is very important from the development side, so to say. If we energy efficiency or anything, that will change all the things like that. So faced by the DMCs in transitioning to clean cooking. Again, thank you for attending this workshop. Let's all make this workshop a success by sharing our knowledge, insights, and experiences on clean cooking. And I'm looking forward to interactive and meaningful discussion. Welcome again to everyone. Thank you.
Yes. Good morning to everyone, and good morning to the audience on the screen as well. I heard yesterday there was a great reception, so the full belly is perhaps combined with some jet lag has perhaps delayed the waking up this morning for some, but I see there's more people in the room than there was 5 minutes ago, so that's encouraging. And then it's going to be recorded, this session as well, I heard, so it's going to be helpful for the ones that didn't make it here in person. But so once again, thank you, Dr. Nam, and thank you, the Asian Development Bank and the ASEF organizers for hosting us here again this year. It's great to be back, and as Dr. Nam said, it's already, I think, 5 years we've organized these deep dive workshops in collaboration with the Asian Development Bank and partners, focusing on many aspects or perhaps blind spots of the energy access agenda and the energy transition agenda as a whole. And certainly clean cooking has been one of those orphan agendas for far too long, but the profile is now raising, and it's making itself on many more radar, so that's certainly encouraging. But as we know, there is no net zero without sustainable energy for all, and this obviously means that having access to electricity and modern cooking really is a prerequisite for a just and equitable energy transition. Now, the importance of having access to clean cooking for people is fairly well understood, including the immediate massive health benefits, especially for women and children that suffer most of the current unjust cooking practices. The gender benefits of having access to clean cooking are also fairly well understood, as are the time savings of not having to spend hours and hours every day collecting wood fuel for cooking. But having access to clean cooking is also an imperative for the planet. We need to save forests and ensure livelihoods, and we also have the opportunity to decarbonize and slash a lot of planet heating emissions by switching to clean cooking. If you look at it, the emissions from traditional cooking methods today are very significant, and it is estimated that they amount to 2 to 3% of the global total, and that's at par with the aviation industry. Now, the immediate opportunity here, of course, is that it will be much cheaper to tackle and decarbonize cooking than innovate in airplanes and jet fuels. But access to clean cooking is also about development. We have the opportunity to promote homegrown solutions and local value chains, rather than having to rely on importing of cooking fuels for everyone's daily needs. And in this era, again, I think it is again emphasized, perhaps unfortunately so, that it's often about energy security considerations too. By 2050, the 1.5 Celsius energy scenario presented by IRENA calls for 85% of all cooking to be done with electricity by 2050. Access to electricity and cooking, therefore, at this point, should really start going hand in hand if we're to achieve those targets. Clean cooking also links up with the other two targets of SDG 7. By promoting green grids, we can power up kitchens with renewable energy, and as countries seek to expand and clean up national electricity systems, they now have an opportunity to drive wider adoption of clean e-cooking too. And at the same time, stimulate electricity demand and improve the business case for new on and off-grid connections. So it really is becoming a win-win for the developers and the users alike. And energy efficiency, of course, will play a key part too, with the end users benefiting from efficient cost-saving appliances for cooking, but also the demand side considerations that are important, as Dr. Nam already highlighted. Therefore, clean cooking is at the core of the renewable energy and the energy efficiency actions under SDG 7 as well. So what is sustainable energy doing to ensure clean cooking for all? At SC for All, we continue working with governments and partners through energy compact commitments and responding to the UN Energy's recent call for country-specific pathways and roadmaps to guide the transition to universal access to clean cooking by 2030 and net zero emissions by 2050. To translate ambition into action, we at SC for All support countries in developing integrated energy access plans that set clear goals for both electrification and clean cooking and direct and attract resources effectively toward meeting those two targets in parallel. These data-driven clean cooking access modeling and planning activities will also support unlocking the much-needed finance for clean cooking actions. There certainly isn't enough of that yet. Hopefully that will change. Now, awareness and behavioral change is another key area where what we want to really start focusing much more on. And I'm pleased to say that, for instance, SC for All, together with its partner, the World Food Programme, only 2 weeks ago, launched a new innovative partnerships that will focus on bringing clean and efficient cooking solutions to schools. These schools will serve as a great platform for championing the transition to clean cooking among cooks, teachers, students, but also the wider community. This model supporting clean cooking in schools we hope to replicate with partners in the Asia Pacific as well. And this is discussions that we're having with the partners later this week here in Manila as well. And that brings me to the final point on partnerships again. In the context of the session today, cooking with electricity offers a promising, scalable, and sustainable alternative. And that's why we at SC for All are championing the Global Electric Cooking Coalition that we launched at COP28 together with our partners, the Modern Energy Cooking Services Program, the Global Energy Alliance for People and Planet, and the Energizing Development Program. I'm pleased to say that the Global Electric Cooking Coalition, or GECO in short, with more than its 20 partners today, will help now supercharge the transition to electric cooking. So it's really about further, faster together by combining the forces of knowledge, data, policy prioritization with finance that will make a change. So therefore, also myself, I look very much forward to the many good presentations and discussions today that will really shed the light on what the opportunity on e-cooking looks like today and what we here in the room and with our partners can do to really help accelerate that electric cooking transition in the Asia Pacific. So with that, those few remarks, I also say thank you and look forward to the discussion later this morning. Thank you.
So for this workshop, we'll have 5 speakers. The first one would be Director Hong Peng-yu of the Energy Division of the United Nations Economic and Social Commission for Asia and the Pacific. He will give us the state of cooking in Asia and the Pacific and the best practices to increase access to e-cooking. Dr. Yu.
Thank you. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It's my great pleasure to join you for this deep dive workshop that focus on e-cooking. And thank you, Dr. Nam, for inviting me. We have worked together for this e-cooking in different countries, and hopefully we will continue this. And I would like to just share with you like an overview of clean cooking situation in Asia Pacific. As Dr. Nam and Miguel just mentioned, cooking, if you look at the cooking, probably the point of view we pay attention is mainly from energy exercise side. But if you see this morning, the audience, the room, compared to other parallel sessions, it's always, you see the situation. That's a reality. When you talk about the renewable, if you talk about the energy efficiency, that's much, much crowded kind of audience. But at the country level, why we just look at this clean cooking? Because the challenges, I really think even from the government point of view, from the business sector, this is not the area they think, it's much more important than the other areas for energy. If you look at the SDG 7, I think Dr. Nam and Mikhail mentioned the energy access, which include access to electricity, access to clean cooking. People and also the government, the policies is more, focus on the access to electricity. If you see that that's the real situation in Asia Pacific for last 2 decades, the energy access to electricity, it's rapidly increased and almost up to now it's 98% of the population access to electricity. But at the same time, we have only 72% of the population access to clean cooking. Oh. So if you see, I think Dr. Nam also mentioned the number of this clean cooking access. At the moment, I think that is up to 2021. There's a consortium focused on this progress of SDG 7, which compressed all the major organizations like World Bank, SE4, WHO, and UNDESA, and all the regional commissions. And the IEA IRENA is part of this consortium. Every year, there's a progress review. And I think the data for cooking is mainly from World Bank and the WHO. Based on this, we just see the Asian Pacific region. Currently, we have less than 75% of energy access to clean cooking. For the whole population, 1.2 billion people without access. Mikhail probably know the SE4 did this clean cooking in Africa. And Africa, in terms of the population, I think it's 1.4 billion population without access to clean cooking, which but takes 85% of the total population in Asia Pacific in Africa. But in Asia Pacific, compared to Africa, the absolute number is almost the same, but the proportion is less. So that's why the emphasis now is more on Africa. But I think in Asia Pacific, we have almost the same population without access to clean cooking, but it's not much on the focus. But I think the work, as you mentioned, Dr. Nam, we have to focus, from like us, from those international organizations, to work with the national government and to pay much more, to invite them to pay much more attention to clean cooking. This is a situation for Asia Pacific. And if you look at Asia Pacific compared to urban and rural, there's also this kind of a big gap, especially for rural population. If you look at this, it's less than 60% of the population without access to clean cooking. And we also analyze the trends. If we go along the current trends without accelerated progress, we probably cannot reach to 100% universal access to clean cooking by 2030. That's definitely the one of the areas we have to alert all the government. If you want committed to achieve this universal access, but clean cooking is always lag behind. So when we talk about clean cooking, I really think the challenges we can emphasize from the 3 aspects. One is from the technical side. It's because of the technology. The technology probably for renewable energy is very fancy and also attractive. But for clean cooking, mostly you have to think about the local context and also the cooking culture. There are a lot of factors. It's not easy to come up with a unified or standard kind of approach or to address these kind of issues. And secondly, for economic reason. That's why, you know, there's now business actually, in particular for private sector, they just focus on the clean cooking. Although there's some companies are doing this, but they are struggling to survive. It's very difficult for them to do, you know, to enlarge their business because this fragmented market. It's scattered for individual household. It's not like you build a large solar PV or wind farm, or you have the building energy efficiency or factory or companies to do energy efficiency project. So that's really, you look at, you know, you have to deal with the individual household. The household usually is in rural areas, very difficult to get your investment back. So that's limited for private financing. But for public finance, that's also a lot of concerns of how you just deal with this. From the policy side, that's a low visibility, and also institutionally, at the central government level, there's no individual ministry in charge of clean cooking. So that's an issue, you know, spread to like energy issue, environment issue, health issue, and social issue. That's a lot of, you know, you need the coordination, you need the joint effort. So that is really difficult. You need a very strong coordinating mechanism. You need the institutional arrangement. You need the really policy, which covers all these different sectors. But why we focus on e-cooking? I think Mikhail and Dr. Nam also mentioned. So the e-cooking, if you talk about clean cooking 10 years ago, probably e-cooking is not on the top. But now it's because the technology development, because the market, the scale up of the market, you really see the potential for electricity cooking relatively, I think, compared to other like clean cooking method like PG and natural gas, or even other liquid and the biomass, the briquetting. Probably this e-cooking is much more feasible. And in terms of the technical side, in terms of even economic side. So I really think there's a new development based on the technology and also the market. So we see there's a great potential. Even 10 years ago, I remember I first met with Simon, you know, we talked about this solar home system for e-cooking. I was surprised to see if you combine with the storage system, if you have your good kind of appliances, you actually can get a very good kind of result, use the solar home system. But 10 years ago, 20 years ago, no one talked about solar home system for cooking because you only have 50 watts for only one light at home. I really think technology development is really stimulate this kind of market. And economical wise, because the different kind of changes and the carbon market, later on you probably can hear from colleagues how they just link this clean cooking with the carbon market, and also the electricity supply, because excess, there was more electricity provided. In particular, some countries, they have renewable energy locally available. That's will really provide more options for this cooking. And then policy-wise, because this kind of SDGs and also the NDCs and the Paris Agreement at the country level, people also, the government look at how they can just meet this kind of commitment through different kind of options. But the challenge is still there. One is how you adapt with the cooking culture. That's exactly a lot of challenges. Different countries, even in one country, different region, different places, different provinces, you have different cooking culture. How you just adapt this e-cooking with the cultural style of cooking. Secondly, who will pay the upfront cost compared to their traditional cooking? There's additional cost, and especially the initial investment, and also how to maintain this kind of new equipment. At the same time, this distribution network compared to their traditional cooking stoves, you really need the system to provide this kind of supplies and also services. So to address this kind of issues, and in SCAP, we started to address these issues, especially when we do this analysis of SDG 7 progress. We look at clean cooking is really a big challenge for the whole region. So how do we start? We just from SCAP, one of our mandate is to do the analytical studies and provide this information to government, to member countries, to draw their attention, to to call these actions. So one of the studies we do is the impact of this clean cooking, and especially with the different kind of technologies, and also to review like the impact of cooking for health and also for energy access. And afterwards, we started the regional dialogues. We also worked with Dr. Nam and tried to see how those different countries can be involved, and also with SE4 support. I think we got a lot of expertise from SE4, provide this review for our report and also provide some ideas. So since 2019, we organized different kind of policy dialogues in Bangkok, also in Bhutan, in Nepal, and Laos. So the three countries we work, actually, we see the potential for e-cooking because they have a rich in hydropower. So hydropower, they have electricity surplus. So I really think this could be a good potential for them to replace their existing cooking fuels with the electricity. And we also have member countries to develop their national SDG 7 roadmap. So this is a roadmap to focus on all SDGs, the three aspects from renewables, from energy efficiency, and also from universal access. Provide based on the different countries' analysis of their existing energy resources and also the target, and to analyze the gaps between their existing national energy plan strategy and the national target with the SDG 7. And also to analyze this between their commitment of their existing plan and the NDC commitment. And now some country already came to us to ask if we can help them to develop their roadmap to achieve net zero beyond 2030. So we have done these roadmaps in 19 countries in Asia Pacific, and we will continue to do the work. And clean cooking is always one of these areas for policy recommendations at the national level. So some of these countries, exactly after we have this national roadmap and there's an implementation stage, they request we focus on clean cooking. So this is where we started with some national activities based on the policy recommendations to start with e-cooking. So the technology option, if you look at this, is really to use this kind of electricity appliances for cooking. And at the same time, there's also identified different options based on their local resources, either to improve the cooking stoves and also biogas and also biomass. And at the same time, there's also national plans to replace the traditional cooking fuels with LPGs and the natural gas in different countries in this region. And also we use criteria from the World Bank, the multi-tier framework. And if you look at the current universal access, even for electricity, for electricity access, I don't think the connection is the target. The target is really you meet the service of, you provide enough service for this electricity demand for all populations, including those in rural and remote areas. So currently our indicators is mainly just if you have connections, that's access. So there's no quantified kind of indicators to meet the demand. And because the demand is, it's dynamic, it's changing, demand based on their income, based on their living conditions. So we really think this multi-tier framework will help us to improve this energy access, including electricity part. And also you have to think about affordability, how people can accept this new technology. and also this availabilities. And more probably we have to focus on this indoor pollution part. It's mainly the health impact for the household. And our work now, we select 3 countries, Bhutan, Nepal, and Laos. These are mainly focused on different kind of options from for e-cooking. Like in Bhutan, we have this partnership with the government and also the Merck's and also the UN Capital Development. It's the organization that mainly support the vulnerable group and to achieve SDGs. And the first phase to identify this kind of e-cooking technologies and also business models. This is already done. And secondly, we have this pilot for 650 households. And third one is to try to scale up based on the pilot. And this is really changing the lifestyle in Bhutan. If you say Bhutan is a main exporter for their electricity to India. So they have a lot of small hydropower resources. That is very good resources to think about e-cooking. And 13% of the population to be connected by 2030. That is really, after this pilot, the government is looking at how they can just provide e-cooking for all their populations even. And there's also IoT, the Internet of Things, enable electricity cooking stoves for higher quality monitoring, and also at the same time to access the carbon market. So this is really, I think, one of the innovative ideas when you have e-cooking facilities and to collect the data centrally and then convert this e-cooking data to carbon credit. I think Bhutan is already signed, the government of Bhutan already signed an agreement with the government of Singapore. Actually, Singapore will buy this carbon credit from Bhutan. That means the household, when you use these cooking stoves, and you at the same time you generate the cash income. So that's really one incentive for them to do this new electricity cooking. And since we have so many these ongoing initiatives in this Asia Pacific, I think this is my suggestion to Dr. Nam and also to Mikhail and to other counterparts. If we look at the next year, if we can think about a regional kind of forum, because this year I think there are a number of global ones. Even IEA recently organized a Clean Cooking Summit, and also SE4 organized this in Africa. So I really think if we can think about the Asia Pacific to have Asia Pacific Clean Cooking Forum next year. So that will bring policymakers, business sector, and also all the stakeholders to think about how the clean cooking could be, these challenges could be addressed from the technical, economic, and the policy side. And I welcome all the organizations here and also other international organizations or country to join us to organize this clean cooking and to discuss how we overcome these challenges to accelerate the clean cooking in Asia Pacific. And I don't expect that we will achieve 100% of clean cooking by 2030, because that's too much. But I think at least, based on the current trends, if we can accelerate this process, at least I think 90 or 95% of the population to achieve clean cooking by 2030. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Lu. So for our second presentation, we'll have a presentation on modern e-cooking, leveraging a decade of Asian electricity access gains, including mini-grids and off-grid generation, and recent developments on accessing carbon finance for e-cooking. So we have Professor Simon Batchelor from the Modern Energy Cooking Services.
Thank you very much. So most of what I want to say has already been said, but this is supposed to be a deep dive, so maybe I'll go into it a little bit more detail than some of our speakers have already said. I'm going to start with this complicated slide because the story has been touched on by the previous speakers that clean cooking has been orphaned over here and electricity is over here. For the last decade or so, yes, it wasn't possible to really conceive of electric cooking a decade ago, certainly not in the solar home system space, but even in the grid space, people were struggling to get the grid and struggling to get that transmission line. But clean cooking space, people whinge that they only got $120 million spent globally on clean cooking. Dr. Nam said he's just about to spend 47 billion, was it? On 4.7, right? Beg your pardon, 4.7. Let's just multiply it by 10. You know, but 4.7 billion on strengthening electricity. And it's that, it's that leveraging of the electricity that is now in the foreground and is now a possibility. So when you talk about, you know, bringing together discussions, those discussions need to have the electricity planners in the room, not this sort of group of clean cooking professionals. And this is where SE for All has really championed and led the charge on integrated energy planning, so that any national plans actually include both the electricity planning and the clean cooking possibilities. I say possibilities because they are still emerging, they are still moving forward. And if you don't do that, you get a situation like Nepal. Nepal is in my eye line at the moment. And where you have low voltage networks that have been rolled out in the rural areas that are not strong enough to do electric cooking. So even though Nepal now has an e-cooking policy, actually it's going to have to go around and retrofit. And in the same way, in the plenary, the Indian speaker talked about having to do a workaround in order to get renewable energy into sitting nicely on the grid. So too, there has to be some workarounds for e-cooking. If we plan in advance an integrated plan, we can avoid that. Hong Pen put up the Nepal e-cookbook. So the place we started was taste of the food, because you don't want to mess with people's foods. Yeah, you can go for low energy efficiency light bulbs and nobody will notice. Yeah, I'm sorry, high efficiency light bulbs. Nobody will really notice the difference in the light. But you start messing with people's traditional taste, then they come at you. Yeah. So in all the places where we work, and I guess I forgot to say that MEX, Modern Energy Cooking Services, is a UK aid funded 8-year program. We're likely to go on 55 million pounds so far, but leveraging something like 375 million and touching 2.5 million people at the moment. Yeah, so we start with taste in a number of countries, and we look at the energy efficiency of cooking a meal. You know, again, in the brief conversation before this session, Dr. Nam was saying that he had done some water boiling tests. So that is the tradition in clean cooking, to look at the efficiency of getting wood into boiling water, to getting LPG into boiling water, or to get electricity into boiling water. But boiling water is only part of the story. You know, cooking the food, simmering it, keeping it going. These are the total energy consumption for creating a meal can be very different. Lighting a fire, the fire carries on. Electricity, switch it on, switch it off. Yeah. So energy efficiency is really important. And you can see here an extract from the Indian cookbook where they've taken specific meals and looked at the difference in cooking. On the left, there's a comparison with the price of LPG. As you know, India made great strides in rolling out LPG. Some people used to think that electric cooking was too expensive. Actually, it's a lot cheaper than if you pay for your biomass fuel. And it's on a par with LPG, depending on which appliance you use. In this case, it can compete with subsidized LPG in India using induction and EPC combination. And you'll see on the right-hand side, there's a difference between an induction and pressure cooker with a manual pressure cooker on top and one of these integrated electric pressure cookers. Hong Pen had it on his slide. Now in Africa, they do a lot of long cooking. So they're boiling their beans for a long time. And that's why you see that on something like dal, the EPC hands down is so much more efficient. And I'll explain why. You know, with almost all other fuels, you have to have airflow, okay? And that airflow is a loss of energy. So we saw again, Hong Pen's slides. I kind of want Hong Pen's slides in parallel here because, you know, he had that close-up picture of a wood fire with a pot on top of it. And you can just see the flames going up the outside. Well, that's all just wasted energy, yeah? Heating the air, let alone the emissions and the whole, you know, that side of things. And even with gas, you know that you must have gas airflow. The thing about electricity is you don't have to have that airflow. You can put the heat and the energy into the food more directly. I hesitated over the words heat and energy because actually it's not energy that cooks food. It is holding food at a particular temperature where temperature represents heat that actually cooks food. So some of you will be aware of things like hay boxes or wonder bags, where you can actually take beans off the stove, put them in a highly insulated environment, and they will continue to cook, yeah, without any further energy going in at all. So this is where we get into the complications as we try to transition. Of course, electric cooking is the norm for developed economies, and there's a mix of electricity and gas at the moment. In my own country, UK, there's a bit of a pushback on gas because we're going to try and move towards net zero, so it'll move across to electricity. But again, Dr. Nam, just before the session, pointed out that there's a lot of coal-fired power stations at the moment. But my point is that everybody is working on that. There is this transition to renewable energy. So whatever we have now, we can move forward with a brighter future in mind. So you can have resistive element. You've seen in the market sort of spiral coils of heating elements. And if you put a pot on top of that, you're still losing energy around the edges, the top diagram, resistive element. And so some professionals have latched onto induction stoves because they say that induction stoves create the heat in the pot. Now, they can only do that in magnetic materials. And so it does mean that people have to have a whole new set of pots. They can't do it in that. Again, Hong Pen's photo of the wood fire was an aluminium pot. You can't just swap that pot across. But nevertheless, the difference between that resistive coil and a pot sitting on it and an induction stove generating the heat within the pot, that's about a 10% gain in efficiency. That's all it is. But then there is the cooking pot itself. Once you actually get that going, and again, I distinguish between short cooking and long cooking. Stir fries, yeah, you just stir fry, boom, 5 minutes, you're done, yeah? But particularly we work a lot in Africa and they do long cooking all the time. Without pressure, they will boil beans for like 3 hours, yeah? With pressure, it comes down to like 40 minutes, yeah? And electric pressure cookers have insulation built in. If you don't have that insulation and you try to, on the previous slide, we were talking about induction plus pressure cooker was a lot less energy efficient than the electric pressure cooker because that pot was not insulated. A pot of this size And this depth radiates 400 to 500 watts while it's simmering. And that's just a loss of energy. So we can see that there's an evolution of energy efficient appliances which are available to us now. So not only did we not have the electricity 10, 15, 20 years ago, we also didn't have those energy efficient appliances. And bringing together that whole SDG 7, the renewable energy as the source of the electricity with the energy efficiency, can tackle this 7.1.2, the clean cooking element. Again, I just want to jump back to the headlines. 1.2 billion people without clean cooking, and yet only 57 million without electricity. Simple math, that's 1 point something billion people who have electricity but don't use it for clean cooking. Right, I must be taking far too much time. Somebody, Mikhail, already mentioned the Global Electric Cooking Coalition. This is all about moving it from a niche sort of idea. You look 2018, pre-2018, you will not find electric cooking really discussed as a possibility for lower middle income countries. Now we have this coalition, we have strong players looking at this leveraging of all this billions of investment in electricity into the problem of clean cooking. I talked about local transformers and the challenge of some of the networks. Yes, there are challenges, but you know, Dr. Nam is just about to spend 4.7 billion sorting it out. Great. You know, so we don't need to go around saying, oh, please can we have another 4 billion to sort out electric cooking? No, Dr. Nam's going to sort out the transmission and distribution, and then we're going to piggyback on it with just a $50 electric pressure cooker. And we'll talk about the upfront cost that somebody mentioned as well. So the proportion of renewables will increase. Irena published a good report this year about just not waiting until you have 99% coverage. In fact, in Asia, you do have 99% coverage. That comment was very much directed at Africa, where they have sort of 60% electricity coverage in some countries. Don't wait until they've reached everybody, but introduce electric cooking early on. And this is from SE for All report. Just this idea of leveraging what has already been existing. Even in a country like Nigeria, when you look at how to get clean cooking to a proportion of the people, if you spend it on gas, you're talking 478 million to get there, yeah? But you spend it on e-cooking, you only need 83 million. Because because of Dr. Nam's equivalent, whoever his Nigerian equivalent, has already spent on the electricity, and you can leverage that. Doesn't tackle everybody, and certainly in Africa, there are areas where electricity has not reached, and the Universal Energy Facility is going to try and tackle that. That leveraging can even apply to mini grids. So there are places where electricity hasn't reached. Mini grids have to be engaged. And this is from some of our research. You can see that this is a 2.5 million spend on a mini grid, $2.5 million spend to build a mini grid. If you don't plan for and don't predict the use of e-cooking or encourage the use of e-cooking, then it takes about 9 or 10 years to get your initial payback, and then you start making a profit. So you're in a negative cash flow up until that point. If you plan and introduce e-cooking, you have to add 300,000 to the cost of the whole. So the 2.5 goes to 2.8. But it still makes sense because your return on investment is now kicks in year 4. And because it's that matching of the demand that you were talking about with the supply. And so a lot of people say, oh, mini grids are not profitable and they need a productive use anchor, and oh dear, woe is me, what are we going to do? Right, e-cooking, You've got a regular demand that you can predict. You can actually change when people start using it by judicious use of tariffs. And again, I perhaps forgot to say that in Africa, we're seeing e-cooking tariffs being introduced. In Uganda, and Kenya is about to do one which can stimulate the demand to get at the right point. And I'm just very conscious of time now because I've taken too long on these first few slides. And again, Hong Pen talked about standalone systems. Malawi, we now have women's networks, women's groups that are running solar shops. They run combinations of solar pumping with solar e-cooking, and you can get a system for $200. Now, $200 is still huge in terms of an upfront cost, but remember, that's $200 for the next 15 years worth of cooking. You know, you only have to start replacing things sort of 10, 15, oh my goodness, 10 minutes left. Okay. All right. So it's about moving forward. It's about looking forward. It's about thinking of what changes are coming. So the other thing I was asked to comment on was the carbon finance. It's been a very, we all know the basics of the voluntary carbon market, and we all, the map below just shows that it's very much clustered in a few countries. But 2024 has been a turbulent year for carbon finance in the cooking space, I think in the general space, actually. There was a publication by the University of California, Berkeley, which basically said they analyzed loads of clean cooking programs and they were all overclaiming. And they were overclaiming by a ridiculous amount, like 9 times what they should be. Now that's a combination of various factors. So it's the fraction of non-renewable biomass, it's the, you know, it's the assumption that if you give somebody a stove, they actually use it and are not stacking it with a traditional fire, etc. What happened with the price is that the price over the last 10 years has been hovering around 6, 7. It actually crept up to 8 or 9. And then the publication came out and now people are being offered $3 credit. Except that, I'm just going to move a bit faster because I'm running out of time. I'll come back to that one actually. Except that you can now do digital monitoring, which again, Hong Peng referred to in his talk. With electricity, you can meter it. You can actually see whether people are using it or not. And if we take that and we actually add an Internet of Things that will report up into the cloud whether somebody's using it or not, then you can get real-time live feedback. I can actually dial up on my phone how many people in Bangladesh are currently using their induction stove to cook. Yeah, because of this group called ATEC, who have made an induction stove with Internet of Things built in. Again, Hong Pen mentioned that that's being introduced into Bhutan. The relevance to the carbon market is that high quality verification has created a premium purchase of carbons. So whereas I said that the clean cooking tier 3 improved cook stove has dropped to like offers of $3 or $4 a ton, the ATEC guys are getting $20 to $25 per ton for quite long-term commitments. And it looks, I recently heard of one group doing this that has been offered $30 a ton. Now at $30 a ton or even 25, you can do something really interesting, which is commit to actually getting that carbon finance down to the user. So that, again, is what we've worked with ATEC on. We call it Cook to Earn. And the carbon finance is transferred to the mobile money wallet of the user each week or month, and that provides an extra incentive for them to use the induction stove. I can see in some people's minds, oh, aren't they just going to leave the induction stove on to get lots of credit? No, because it's still costing them slightly more in electricity than that carbon payment. So they would be wasting their money. They don't get more than they've spent in the electricity. But what it has done is mitigate the electricity. So whereas the electricity might have been 6 cents per kilowatt hour, you're getting 3 to 4 cents back through the carbon credit. You're talking 2 cents. It just makes the economics even better than it was. So again, it was interesting yesterday, the point about the retiring of the coal-fired power station was that it was worth doing even if there was no carbon involved. It changed the investment dynamics such that it was worth pulling back the retirement 6 or 7 years. Then when you added the carbon, it made it worthwhile retiring it even further. So another 6 or 7 years. And you've got the same thing here. It makes sense to cook with energy efficient appliances from electricity, and the carbon is a bonus. If you can get the carbon to the customer, then that's just making their life even greater. So we've gone from, you know, a polluting fuel. We talked about the 2.3 billion worldwide, of which 1.2 billion are in Asia, 3 million deaths, premature deaths every year. I don't think we've mentioned that number yet. You know, we can get away from that and at the same time improve the household economics. Now, the one I skipped, and sorry, my slides may be in slightly the wrong order. One of the problems with the carbon finance, have I still got 2 minutes? 2 minutes, 3 minutes. One of the problems with carbon finance is that it's very expensive to register. So unless you have a decent amount of money up front, or you've got Dr. Nam as a friend who can just, you know, ADB can come in. But the point is, a lot of our partners sort of say, oh, but it's too expensive to register, and it's like £150,000 at the moment to register a carbon project. So you got to be really clear on what your value proposition is. However, again, look to the very near future. Okay, there are groups working on digital platforms that will reduce that entry cost. You'll be able to you'll almost be able to sign up with just 1 or 2 households and be able to access the carbon flows. So they will connect directly the live data from the appliances through to the carbon buyer, and the carbon buyer can just buy directly. So there's a group called Cavex, yeah, it is on the slide. I nicked that, and they're already doing it with solar pumping. They will launch their platform properly, probably by December this year. Okay, and then we've heard a lot about the formalizing of the flows, Article 6.2, bilateral arrangements. Bhutan and Singapore has been mentioned, but there will come Article 6.4, which will be multilateral arrangements, and that will make everything a bit cheaper as well. Yeah, 3 minutes. I think I probably should stop. Thank you.
So thank you so much, Simon. So speaking of Bhutan, we actually have a video from Deshan Dema from the Ministry of Energy and Mineral Resources of the Royal Government of Bhutan. In this video, she will be sharing their experience on clean cooking.
Hello everyone, I am Dishindema from the Department of Energy, Ministry of Energy and Natural Resources, Royal Government of Bhutan. Today I'll be sharing Bhutan's experience with Clean Cooking Program. And this is my brief outline for the presentation. I'll be going through the country profile, energy strategy, national energy scenario, and the Clean Cooking Program in the country, under which I'll be discussing more on the Clean Cooking Initiative, the background on the pilot project development, and the pilot project itself. So Bhutan is a very small country. It's only 38,294 square kilometers. The capital is Thimphu, and our population is also very small. It's less than 800,000. The major source of electricity in the country is large hydropower plant, which is both renewable and clean. And we have a beautiful mountain with forest covered up to 70%. And even in our constitution, we are mandated to maintain at least 60% of forest cover. And fun fact, Bhutan is a carbon neutral country, in fact, carbon negative country. I also quickly like to share the Department of Energy's mission and vision. And to achieve this, we have the energy strategy. We're using the energy, technology, and infrastructure to have a developed Bhutan for its people, prosperity, and progress. These are some of the policies and master plan roadmaps that we have, and some we are coming up with in order to have a developed Bhutan. As for our national energy scenario, we have hydropower, large hydropower, then wind power, solar, biogas, solar thermal, and in the recent times we have started exploring green hydrogen. As you can see here, we are majority, we have large hydropower production. The other alternative renewable energy, we're just starting up, and then in the coming years, we would like to have more of the alternate renewable energy share in the country. As for the green hydrogen, we have prepared a proposal for piloting 1 megawatt production and then take it forward from there. In terms of consumption, energy supply, we have a majority of thermal needs, of which majority is from the biomass, then coal and its derivatives, then we have the petroleum products, and a very small component of solar water heating system. And in terms of electricity, majority of it is coming from the large hydropower, followed by solar and wind, which is a very small component, a small percentage. In terms of energy demand, as you can see, the major demand is from the industry sector, followed by the building sector and the transport sector. Now, deep diving into the clean cooking program in the country, traditionally we used firewood for cooking, which meant collection of firewood, which is again associated with forest degradation, not to mention the poor indoor air quality or air pollution. And because it was heavily dependent on firewood, it meant it was time consuming and labor intensive, especially for women and children who majorly took up the role of household chores and cooking in the families. As the time progressed, in the rural, it was the improved cook stove was promoted, and it helped to reduce the indoor air quality, air pollution. And in the urban, mostly in the urbans, the use of LPG was noted, which is much cleaner option than the fuel wood. However, the import of LPG was still a challenge because we do not have our own LPG production, so it is mostly import dependent. And in the recent times, we have noted a lot of electric appliances for cooking, which is used in both rural and urban households. And especially in the urban, in the recent times, we have noticed an increased number in the electric cook stoves, like infrared induction cook stoves. Giving a brief background on the pilot project development, the Department of Energy collaborated with the UN ESCAPE to come up with SDG 7 roadmap. And then basically it was a guide to achieve the 3 main goals of the SDG 7 by 2030, which was the access to electricity, access to clean fuels and technologies for cooking, renewable energy in the global mix, and energy efficiency. So ESCAPE took the baseline year of 2017 and used energy data from 2017 to come up with the energy scenario and recommendations. So the major recommendation from the SDG 7 roadmap was that the clean cooking access rate was estimated at 77% in the base year of 2017. The remaining 23% still relied on inefficient and unclean traditional biomass and kerosene cook stoves. And the LPG cook stove was the most dominant primary clean cooking technology with an estimated percentage of 69.7%. So why the department is promoting the electric cook stove? LPG is cleaner and is a much better option than the fuel wood. However, it's still a fossil fuel, and for a country like Bhutan, it's a heavily import dependent. And second thing is Bhutan is already 99.97% electrified, and the electricity tariff in the country is one of the lowest in the region. And even globally, our electricity tariff is one of the cheapest tariff. And finally, the electric cook stove, both infrared and induction cook stoves, are highly efficient as compared to LPG and definitely compared to the fuel wood. So this in turn also is boosting the energy efficiency that the department is heavily advocating. So a little more detail on the pilot project itself. In the first phase, we tried using the ATEC induction cook stove. So this cook stove is IoT based, which means we could examine the real-time data on how the cook stoves are consuming the energy. And this would later help us when we want to access the carbon finance. And in this phase, we also did baseline data collection through cooking diaries, where 37 households were provided with the stove, and then their cooking details were noted. And we also did 3 numbers of control cooking testing, where 3 local cooks were given to cook popular British cuisine, and then we compared the cook stove, the induction cook stove, with LPG, infrared, and electric pressure cooker. And at the end of this phase, we developed and published the cooking diaries report and e-cookbook, which is available on our website. So one of the main findings from this control cooking testing was we found out the advantage and disadvantage of each cooking stove, especially LPG, induction, and infrared. But I would like to draw your attention to the energy consumption overall, where we noted that LPG, highlighted in blue, consumed the most energy in cooking the same dish. And the induction, which is highlighted in green, was consuming the least energy in cooking the same dish. So here we can draw the conclusion that induction cook stove was the most efficient technology. In the second phase, which is what we are doing currently, we are now piloting the induction cook stove to different regions in the country. Here we're engaging our local trader and vendor for distribution of cook stove, and we'll be building the local production and after-sales service capacity. And we will continue to monitor the energy consumption data for carbon credit compliance and improvement in the future program delivery. And if the program is successful, then we would like to showcase the success stories to other countries that are also aiming to achieve universal access to clean cooking. In the third phase, which is a national level rollout, we will be identifying financing avenues to fund these electric cook stoves for the remaining of the household, which is around 30,000 households. We want to attract the investment in electric cook stove and explore carbon credits. We want to establish local capacity for the national level uptake of electric cook stove, which includes after-sales services as well. And we want to promote electric cook stove to households that are currently using the LPG cook stove, so that we can reduce the import of LPG in the country. In terms of carbon finance agreement, the Royal Government of Bhutan and the Government of Singapore has signed Article 6 Carbon Trading Corporation MOU on May last year. This MOU is basically to identify mutually beneficial Article 6 compliant carbon credit projects to support both countries to achieve their NDCs. The possibility of financing clean cook stove through this mechanism will help our cook stove project as well, especially in the national level rollout. The ATEC cook stove, which has built-in IoT, is a gold standard verified and is provides the real-time energy data that can be used for the carbon trading. I would also like to share some of the challenges that we face and solutions that we came up with or recommend to any other who is trying to do the similar project. First was the data collection using 2G stove. In the inception phase, we tried with 2G cook stove. However, for Bhutan, capital city and some of the bigger districts, we have 4G networks. So the 2G stoves were not communicating with the dashboard, so we were not able to see the energy consumption. So that's why in the current pilot phase, we have asked for 4G enabled cook stove, especially for the capital and some of the bigger cities. There were certain reservations from the local traders and dealers because they have invested so much time, effort, and money in promoting the other forms of cook stove, especially infrared, which is quite popular in Bhutan. However, we advocated the benefits of IoT-based cook stoves and how it will help the expansion of the market in the country. Excuse me. And we also help them understand that with different product coming into the market, it will help expand their market and product, and also in the future help them participate in carbon trading as well. So in the pilot phase with the limited stove, because we got only 650 cook stoves, preparing a distribution strategy was really a challenge because for a big number of households having only 650. So what we did was we requested the local government for their help in selection of the beneficiary, and then had to come up with our own selection criteria to identify which household would be selected for the pilot project. In terms of safety aspects of rural household wiring, we wanted to ensure that because some of the rural households may not have proper household wiring, so for that we did a pre-assessment for all of those selected household for the pilot project, and we did assessment for whether the household wiring was safe or whether they were in good condition or not. As for the after sales services for the selected technology, because this stove was new in the country, we do not have after sales services or spare parts. So it could be a challenge in the future in terms of sustainability. For this, we have requested ETEC to train our local dealers and provide after-sales services for these stoves, and even provide spare parts for the maintenance or any other issues that might come up in the future. And we foresee that fuel stacking will continue in the country, and LPG could be the primary source for cooking. Through this pilot project, we are encouraging the use of electric cook stove as the primary source. So even though the fuel stacking may continue, we are encouraging the people to use electric cook stove as the primary source and LPG as a backup source of cooking. And with this, I come to the end of the presentation. I would like to thank you for your attention. If there are any additional information that you would like, please feel free to contact me. My email address is shared here, and I'll be happy to share any information I have for you. Thank you.
Okay, so we've come to a point where we need coffee. So let's have our coffee break outside, and let us return at 11 p.m. 11 a.m. for the second half. 11.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you for the invitation. I'm really happy to be here. It's my first time in Philippines, so I'm really enjoying it. Let's see. Thank you. So you'll be, after all that was discussed, do you see that some slides is just a little bit more of the same? I'll try to go quicker on these slides and go a little bit more in the discussion. So here, just the numbers we know, right? You have two, I'm thinking at global level, and so it's important to know the number of people that lack access. You're talking about 3 billion. The health that was also mentioned, that you have 3.2 million premature deaths. The gender, we estimate that we have around 47 days of extra work each year, unpaid, and mostly by women and girls. And also you have 1.7 gigaton of CO2 emissions, which is about 3% of global emissions. And here it's important to say that when you talk about 3%, you're talking about something similar to aviation. And when aviation is trying to define how to do so, on cooking, we know, at least in theory, how to do so, right? And when you talk about SDG, if it's true that you're talking about the SDG 7, we are also talking about the other SDGs, because we're talking about food security, health, education, gender equality, income generation, reduce inequality, and climate action. And why this is important? It may seem obvious when you talk about the other SDGs. This is important because the way we work at the Clean Cooking Fund, it's that we don't work just with energy access and energy groups. We work with multiple entry points. So even if it's true that it's a challenge, that the clean cooking, it's a problem on different sectors and may bring some challenge, as was said, for coordinated, it's also an opportunity, because we integrate clean cooking as components of operations on health, on climate, on forest, on clean air program. For instance, for us in Asia, the biggest programs we have on clean cooking, it's not on energy access, it's about clean air program. So that's also a multi-entry point that allow us to do operations in different fronts. But to do so, even if it's hard to convince a colleague of us that work on energy access for a while to do clean cooking, imagine somebody that's looking on hospitals, or who is looking on schools, or looking on air. So the Clean Cooking Fund, this mechanism is where we have a platform that allows the whole World Bank, not just energy, but the whole World Bank, to access this structure that they can include components on their own operation. It's really hard, and I would say I had never seen one clean cooking operation. We always talk about operations that include clean cooking components, which give us a challenge, but also a big opportunity to include this component in different areas. And it's a lot about convincing also the policymakers, for sure, that they need to prioritize it, but also our own colleagues on the whole bank, that these need to be included as a component. And how to convince our colleagues? Sometimes, of course, we need to talk, but we need to make their life easier. We need to be able to propose then a program or a mechanism that they can easier understand and include in their own operation strategy. So it was also said the order is not on track. So if you keep using the same piece we have right now, we have 1.7 billion people lacking access 2030. If there is no substantial change, this is the number that we, together with the WHO, estimated that what we are seeing if there is no really revolution on this space. And here it goes a little bit what Simon said, but with another numbers and another way to see that. But here I just want to show, when you talk about energy transition for the most vulnerable people, there is no energy transition to the most vulnerable, that there is no clean cooking. Why? Because when you look here, when you look at the first quintile, so the most vulnerable and the poorest, the energy that they expend, that they use, is cooking. It's not anything else. So when you talk about Togo, for instance, you're talking about around 9% of the energy that they actually use is cooking. So that's one of the main arguments that we're using right now, also together with the G20, to bring this message that there is no just energy transition that does not include cooking. And here you can see it's even if it's different from country to country, there is no country that it's a minor thing. This is actually a major thing when you talk of the most vulnerable people. And another thing that's quite interesting, that if you look inside of the countries and the importance of cooking for the highest income and the lowest income, it's you see that at least it's around 5 times the lowest income than the highest income. So if we're doing energy transition just on electricity access and not include the cooking aspect, actually you're doing the energy transition for the highest level of income groups in our population, not to the lowest income group of the population. So that's an important element to take in account. And that's not just important because of the message of the just energy transition, but also about how to do so. You're not talking about one thing that we discussed a little bit before entering here. It was, yeah, sometimes it's easier to do some projects that you have a higher leverage, right, of the private sector and etc. It's true, because usually you're not talking about this group of the population. I'm talking here of the most vulnerable, and these people usually are those related with social protection programs. And that's also open an area of work together, because social protection programs, it's where to keep sustainable cooking along the time, we need to include this. So that's one of the message. The other message that I think it's quite interesting here, it's that not just about carbon finance we discussed, and just to think a little bit about when you decrease the emissions per year from a charcoal cook stoves to improved charcoal cook stove. So I'm not talking about big change. I'm talking about the base of the base. I'm decreasing the emissions related to one average US cars. What does it mean if you compare a price of electrical car with e-cook stove? It makes sense. So when you talk about this change, we need to think that even if there is a lot of challenge, and here I put just LPG because the e-cooking depends of the matrix of the electricity, but just here, just to have an idea about what we're talking about, right? So when you talk with our colleagues, and there is a lot of challenge on CO2 emission and how to measure it and how to do the carbon, we should not forget the big message here. We're talking about hydrogen, you're talking about SAF. What's the biggest effort we need to do to decrease the same amount of CO2? So that's a little bit what we want to cook. And what's the Clean Cooking Fund? So as was mentioned, I lead the Clean Cooking Fund. What's the Clean Cooking Fund in the World Bank? The World Bank, as Simon started to mention, have been working on cooking for a while now. We have tracking projects since the 2000s, and a colleague here just mentioned, even before that, there was projects on cooking, and how the changes were done in the sense for us to scale up and include more cooking components in our projects. So the first we can see it was a lot about piloting and knowledge. Then we include a lot of IBRD and IDA finance. But as we know here, there is a lot of challenge on prioritize the IDA and IBRD because the government needs to choose between things. And then we create the Clean Cooking Fund. What the Clean Cooking Fund does, the Clean Cooking Fund has different objectives. One of them is raise awareness around the world, and here we are, and do partnerships and try to push the agenda together with our partners. The second thing is to create a platform that makes easier for our colleagues in the bank to include cooking component inside of their operation, not just energy access, but other areas. And the third part, which is quite important, is that we provide grants that help help to decrease the cost of the clean cooking components, and it helps to convince countries to actually include the clean cooking components. So they are choosing between different kind of prioritization on development, and on clean cooking, they may have some support of the clean cooking in different phase of this approach. And this helped us to include the clean components in our operation. The goal of our of the Clean Cooking Fund is to achieve 500 million to catalyze 2 billion investment and reach 200 million people. And we have already the first phase, and we're starting the second phase of the Clean Cooking Fund. Our goal, sometimes people say when you are working the bank, we take a little bit more time to make these things work. And we use a lot of the knowledge that the pilots that our colleagues and the bottom-up work that many of you, our partners, do. What we try to do is to scale up. So to create mechanism and instrument that allow us to make it bigger and achieve more people and develop the market. So when you talk about the Clean Cooking Fund, this is a little bit how we work. So we have our internal partners. The internal partners are the cross-sector expertise and the upstream support. So cross-sector expertise, we work with health, climate change a lot. Environmental, one of our big operations is about forests, for instance. We have gender, social protection, as I said, some case, the best way to include a clean cooking component, it's part of the social protection, agriculture, and also people from behavior science. And recently, we are also working with IFC and MEGA, so guarantees and private sector as well. And also we work with upstream support. So when there is the country climate development report, we at the Clean Cooking Fund, we developed a clean cooking component that include in the development strategy of the country. This development strategy in the country, it's where it frames the relationship between the World Bank as a whole and the country. So when you include the clean cooking component there, it facilitates us the dialogue and give us the prioritization that we need. You also do the country environmental analysis. We help on the diagnostic, the co-benefit assessment, and different other elements, including the energy compact of the World Bank. We work with the external partners here. Max, it's as I was talking with Simon, we are part of Max. So the SMAP is one of the legs of Max, and we work a lot together on when you talk about e-cooking. Another big part of us with the SMAP is C4O. We work in several projects, especially in the countries together. And we work with WHO, for instance, in the track. So we have different kind of partners, external partners, and we work both on investment and knowledge pillar during the whole process of our operation, from preparation, appraisal, negotiation, implementation support, and the country partnership framework, which is really important for us in the identification. Here, it's just an example. I know that's not in the region, but just to have an idea about how you do it. Actually, we support, for instance, the case of Rwanda. We supported Rwanda doing the inclusion of clean cooking their NDCs. Then we supported them on the Clean Cooking Energy Compact and the Rwanda CCDRs. That's this partnership with the bank. With this framework on policy and upstream, we support the preparation of the grant and the team technical support to support the preparation of the operation itself. Then we are working on the co-financing implementation, where we bring some grants to decrease the cost and incentive the governments to actually implement clean cooking component. And as this case, it really works well. We did after additional finance document where we include carbon finance. So as it was already designed, our result-based finance, we basically use the same result-based finance and included the carbon finance to feed the package that feeds this result-based finance mechanism. And with this, we worked with several our partners on this internal and external. And when you talk about how it works, Clean Cooking Fund, we can see that before the Clean Cooking Fund, we have some operation on clean cooking, but after the Clean Cooking Fund that started in 2019, 2020, we were able to build a pipeline and actually to scale up our financing at the bank, not just considering the grants, but we actually scale up the IDA financing, the bank up support to the clean cooking. We more than double our finance on IDA because of the Clean Cooking Fund, not considering the grants, just consider what the bank actually implements. As was said, the bank is also a demand driven. So it's fun. Sometimes people ask us, and Michael is saying, you should announce something on financing, and said, look, from our case, the demand is based on the countries. If the country want to have everything on clean cooking, why not? But the big question is how to make them prioritize, and that's why we did it, and we are doing it. Of course, we have different knowledge products and events. Many of them is working with our partners, and also we have a training that's open. We have 3 different trainings, one on behavior change, how to include behavioral in clean cooking. We have one on clean cooking in general, and another one how to include gender components on the clean cooking. We have a planning tool that allows us to calculate the co-benefits at the top, at a broader level, not in the detail, but a broader level. And yeah, here we have some work that we did, for instance, with Max, with cooking, with electricity, and several other products. So when you think about what's needed, knowledge and innovation, finance and funding, that's really important. If you don't have finance and funding, we are not able to scale this up. Enabling condition, and here you stop a little bit. When you talk about planning, it's really important, and the work has, I think the model that I personally see the most interesting one is the one that C4O is leading on Rwanda, because it's actually able to compare and optimize different ways to use electricity access and cooking access. But I really believe you need much more, because here we have an interesting model, but we need to be able to have it open and people be able to use it. And for that, we need to convince our colleagues that do planning to include cooking, and that's a not easy task. And I was discussing with Simon as well. We need to show them that not just that they can do it, but you benefit of it. Because one of the numbers that has helped me convincing people is, and I say, look, that a graph that people expend 8% of energy expenditure in cooking. Let's think if they use it to pay your grid or to pay the mini grid, how much they can actually lead this development. So not just it's possible, but it can actually help to give electricity access. But when you talk, it's not just planning. We need to talk about regulatory agents. We need to talk about other, all the stakeholders associated with the energy and electricity, environmental, and also market and industrial development, energy and appliance. Here, before I go here, I just want to do a reflection with you. When you talk about clean cooking, you have some countries that there is no development of market at all. Okay, so you have some countries that you're talking that more than 9% of the population has no clean cooking. Okay, most of these countries are in Africa, but you may have some of them in Latin America and the Caribbean, as Haiti, and some of them here in Asia, as Laos, for instance. There are some countries that really need to develop the market. So, but that's not just the only countries that need to have clean cooking, universal clean cooking access. We have many other countries that need to push further. And when you talk about these other countries, we may separate them inside of the country in different groups. For instance, we have some people that have access to cooking or even the stoves, but they are not able to pay the bill. That's a big part of this group, because if you look the numbers of what are the countries that moved quicker on recently on clean cooking, they were mostly based on LPG, and they were mostly based on LPG subsidies. When this become a deficit for the government, and that's become a problem on how to pay it, usually what it happens that this price increase and people go back to their old field. So the number I have in mind, I know that's not Asia, but I have it. I'm Brazilian. I have this number in mind. If you think about Brazil, you have just around 4% of the Brazilians that in theory does not have access to clean cooking. But 25% of the energy consumption at household level in Brazil, it's biomass. Does not make any sense, these numbers, right? So what does it mean? That there is a lot of people that in theory, they have access to cooking service, but they actually does not have access on how to pay the bill. And this is it's a challenge that we don't deal with it just with a stove market, but we need to have a sustainable way to actually keep the service to the people. The second group are the group that have electricity, and Simon was saying that, and does not have cooking service. So that's a second group where we need to think the best way to include cooking service can be through electricity or other mechanisms. But in this group, we have already the infrastructure there, and we may be able to implement cooking service depending on how this infrastructure is already there. And there is a third group where there is no electricity and no cooking service. And that's where the planning, the universal access is really important, because we're trying, when we're going this place, we may be able to do it much better economic and financially if you go together. So thinking inside of the countries, don't just these different groups may help us to think about operations and programs that actually fit to that. So financing solutions to uptake clean cooking service. Here, I think I have 3 minutes. So I go there. So when you talk about financing solutions, as we said, we need to have funding and financing. We know that big part of our challenge are the most vulnerable people. We know that one of the biggest problem we have is affordability. So we need to have an innovative way to actually finance this. And here we have different mechanisms that we need to combine to be able to leverage. So one of these, it's all the grants and development funds that usually it's where we tap to push the Clean Cooking Fund. And it's really important to combine them to leverage each other. But also, we need to be able to push further on the climate finance. For instance, the bank has one GCF with Bangladesh that was really important to us in the beginning of this process of the Clean Cooking Fund. And we are working with other climate finance initiatives, especially to try to prioritize clean cooking, seeing the potential we have. We have all the discussion on carbon credits that, of course, we need to look on how to require trust and low transaction costs that was also discussed, but also we need to develop further, and this is, I guess, the less developed of the four, it's the outcome finance. We need to be able to measure the outcomes, to be able to work on these impact bounds that can be much beyond CO2, because the biggest impact of clean cooking is not on CO2. Probably that's the easiest way to monetize it, but it's not the biggest impact. So here we need to work on market and industrial development, both on appliance and energy. Energy is a really important part of this chain. And I think that's where we are working really closely with Max and other partners to actually bring this discussion to the energy sector. And before ending it, I want to talk a little bit about the demand side, just to finalize, and then just the knowledge agenda. But I want to highlight here, one of the things that we understood is that the demand and the behavior change is really important. And these have two parts of it. There is the economic incentive, the non-economic incentive. And this does not happen just before, but need to happen before, in the process of change, and after the process of change of the cooking. And for the social protection, so when you talk before, it's really important to have some demonstration mechanisms, and also to have a big understand about the culture and the barriers. And here the cooking, it's how to cook, it's really important. In the process of change, the communication, it's one of the biggest part of it. But after the process of keeping using it, it's really important to keep a strategy related with maintaining, and also the maintaining and the adaptability of this of the use of it during time. It includes tariff, but all the process of appliance as well, not just the stove itself, but also the pans and etc. So the biggest projects of in-cooking I have seen have failed. Sometimes they came back to LPG because they were not able to maintain it in time related with the appliance and the stove, etc. So there is different moments that the behavior and the communication need to apply. And for that, there is a big knowledge agenda that we need to work together to get it, because knowledge is a public good. And I think there it's the best, it's the easiest way to work everybody together. Thank you very much. I already lose, yeah.
So thank you, Michelle. So to discuss that behavioral change communication, we'll have Bastian Tuen of he's an energy sector leader in Cambodia. He's also the Global Cooking Energy Advisor for SNV.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Bastiaan Teune. I live and work in Southeast Asia for the last 20 years. I implemented cooking energy programs, starting with biogas, improved cook stoves, gasifiers, semi-gasifier, forced draft gasifiers, and everything in between. And currently I'm based in Phnom Penh in Cambodia, and there we are engaging in a program which is only and focusing really strongly on behavioral change. I'm happy Ivo is here in the room. We started in 2005 in Asia, so he's my colleague when we started off in SNV. So nice to see some familiar faces along with many others of you. A little bit about SNV. We are a global development partner. So SNV is an INGO without own money. So we always are working in partnership, including the ADB, to realize programs in the field. So we have about 60 years of experience. Of course, it's a changing organization, as you can imagine, and we have about 1,600 people working with us. Most of them are, of course, the nationals of the countries that we work in. We're really about capacity building, about catalyzing partnerships, and we work in agriculture, in water, and in energy, and I am responsible for energy. In 2023, we reached 6.4 million people. We are SDG aligned, so we always work in the framework of Sustainable Development Goals. We also have the principle of market development. So in all our programs, it's about demand, supply, and the enabling environment. Now let's zoom in on Cambodia. In the case of Cambodia, with regards to energy, so there are about 3.6 million households, and out of them, 2 million households are cooking on firewood. In part of firewood or only with firewood, most of them have a little bit of access to LPG, but there's a strong stove stack. If you take those 2 million households and you realize that they burn about 3 to 4 kilos of wood per day to suffice their energy needs, you talk about 8 million kilos of firewood per day. That's burned every day as we speak today to prepare meals. And this is for a very small Asian country. So you can imagine the zeros added if we do this calculation for those 1.7 billion people that still rely totally on biomass. This has, of course, a footprint in our more conservative estimation, which is not a factor 10 too high. We come to about 4.5 million tons of CO2 equivalent. And according to the Lancet studies, 14,000 people die annually. Now, to put that in perspective, I looked at how many people actually die annually in Cambodia, and it's about 100,000 that die. So about 14% is attributable to household air pollution from cooking. Has anybody been in Cambodia already and have seen the Angkor Wat? For those of you who have not been there, you're blessed because you still can go and have this amazing first view of Angkor Wat. And next to Angkor Wat, there's the Bayon Temple, which is maybe even more beautiful. It's the temple with those 4 faces. And they have the murals. And of course, since I live in Cambodia, I go there more often. And as I am a bit of a freak regards cooking energy, this caught my eye. And you see here 1250 AD, how people prepared their meals in the Khmer Empire of Cambodia. And then when you go out of the temples and you're in Siem Reap, which is the location where the temples are, and you visit one of the households, you see this. And you see this technology advance. It's just an iron pipe. I mean, we're essentially doing the same as 1,000 years ago. I use this image to trigger the ministries to say, look at Cambodia, where you have come and where you are now, and the modernity and the advancement. But in cooking energy, you're still doing the same as your brothers and your sisters back in the Angkor Empire. We talk about Asia and cooking, and I think it can be summarized in 2 words: opportunity gap. If we look at the electricity in Cambodia, then 95% of households, they have access to pretty reliable, decently quality electricity. And yet 68% of the households still use primarily on firewood. And I think this is for Asia the biggest analysis. Like, there is an opportunity. There is not so much a need for innovative and access to finance. The solution is just in your house, and that will of course come with a lot of issues and barriers. But these are situations where we can foresee a quick acceleration in electric cooking. So that brings me to Smoke-Free Village. Smoke-Free Village is a concept where we capitalize on that opportunity gap. It is taking place currently in Cambodia, Laos, Nepal, and Mozambique. But I will zoom in into Cambodia because there we're more advanced than in the other countries. Smoke-Free Village approach has different components. One of them is the policy intervention. So we worked under a World Bank project on the development of a clean cooking energy strategy and plan with the Ministry of Mines and Energy in Cambodia. It's about demand creation and private sector development. So there's the market development, and it has a very strong BCC component, the behavioral change and awareness. That's the pinnacle of the Smoke-Free Village approach. This is our governance framework, where we see how we can work with governance and clean cooking in a vertical and a horizontal level. So the vertical level is global, where I'm here today. That's also part of my job, which makes it exciting. Last week, I was talking with the Ministry of Mines and Energy in Phnom Penh. And next week, I will be working on the commune level with households and village heads to promote clean cooking. And then on the horizontal governance, it's been said before, cooking energy is an orphaned topic, but at the same time, it has an opportunity because it fits in so many different sectors. So it relates to schools, to health centers, to religious leaders. It has to do with a lot of different stakeholders in society. And we will issue a white paper on this very soon. This is a stakeholder no, this is the Commune Council for Women and Children. Now, this is the Commune Council where we work in a working group for clean cooking. And I wanted to show this photo because you can see the religious leaders. You can see the policemen in the photo. There are the village heads. And why I wanted to show this photo is to demonstrate that all walks of life are coming together on a subnational level on a quarterly basis to evaluate the progress of clean cooking in their villages. We start with 4 key behaviors, and what you can see here is that the behaviors and the approach is not starting off with technology, but it's starting off with no regret measures. So the no regret measures is keeping your children away from cooking, cooking well ventilated areas, and dry your wood before cooking. So those are behaviors that already reduce smoke. It's not ideal, but it's the first step towards the transition to clean cooking. It's also very important to say that this approach has been adopted from the water and sanitation approach, where we are educating the villagers to go to a toilet, to have a toilet, to use a toilet, to maintain a toilet. So that's called the Sustainable Sanitation and Hygiene for All approach. Which is also very much about behavioral change, because our water colleagues are better informed than our energy colleagues, that it's not about the technology, it's not about the toilet, but it's about the usage. And it's also about the disgust towards open defecation. And as such, I was in a very happy situation, because we just finalized, we concluded a USAID-funded water and sanitation program. So all those good colleagues, they could work with me to start to develop a smoke-free village. This is the location. This is Cambodia. By next year, we will be active in 4 provinces, in 500 villages with 100,000 households, and roughly 500,000, 500,000 people will be receive educational activities about clean cooking. It's very much a woman by woman affair. The behavioral change communication activities are coordinated by the Commune Council for Women and Children, which obviously are occupied mainly by women. Half of the shop owners in rural Cambodia are females. And of course, most cooks are still a woman. These are the activities. So far, as of now, we've reached 200,000 people with BCC village meetings. So we sit under the mango tree and we have materials to educate about cooking energy. We have smoke-free village days in which we explicitly invite participation of stakeholders and children to demonstrate through sketches, through plays, what cooking energy means to them. We have door-to-door visits, so also people will receive from the Commune Council a visit at their house to ask, as part of our monitoring process, what is your cooking energy now? And we have fairs where the supply can show and demonstrate their products. Now, this is all our information, education, and communication materials. You can see the NDEF logo very clearly, because NDEF is the main funder of this program. This is how we work at schools. We do school paintings and murals, and we also have prizes for the children for the best paintings. We do a lot of community dialogue. So this is how it looks like. Here's a village head explaining to people that it's bad for your lungs, but also bad for the lungs of your children. And on the back, there are women from the village demonstrating that cooking on LPG, cooking on electricity, is much simpler than they may have thought. We work with the religious leaders who in their praying also, or at the start of their praying, also communicate about it. And we are very strong on the GSI inclusion. So we have 3 target groups that we really keep focus on is people who are registered as poor. We call it in Cambodia ID poor, people living with disabilities, and woman-headed households. So this is a bit of photos that I bring from Cambodia to get a little bit of a couleur locale, how it looks. Also, we involve men in the BCC. This is one of the games that we have. So there are photos and they can make a story out of it that relates to clean cooking. Here is how women are cooking together, have a lot of fun and laughter. This is a supplier who is selling her electric cook stoves. And this is one of the schools with the murals where we have the behaviors here at the primary school. And then the teachers are also teaching. We work currently with 100 schools. Next year, there will be 200 schools that are provided on a periodically basis with a short introduction about clean cooking. And this is how it goes in the village. So we have all sorts of materials to make it entertaining and to make it nice for the audience to get educated about cooking energy. Now, this is a photo gallery. So the village people come together and then they walk past a gallery of all sorts of photos. One of the photos here that we show is the ATEC induction cook stoves. This is a gathering in a religious ceremony. And this also is part of our demonstration because the first impulse is clean cooking is expensive. Now I'm talking here to an audience who is already convinced that it's maybe differently. But in this table, we put the unit of the energy fuel and the cost unit in rural Cambodia. And then we estimate it based on controlled cooking tests or based on data that we have from other sources, how much of those units are consumed. So in a traditional wood stove, it comes down to about 85 kilos per month. If the stove is improved, then you come to 60 kilos of wood, etc., etc. And in terms of electricity, you come to about 43 kilowatt hours, and LPG consumption is in the range of 5 kilos per month. Those are scenarios that you only cook on that particular stove. So in reality, of course, there is stove stacking and there is a bit of a mix of it. But the most interesting part is hidden by Talking HQ Mobile One, but the thing is that the fuels are so significantly cheaper from the traditional. So it's $6 and LPG is also $6 against $15 to $20. So whatever your scenario is, it is so obvious that clean cooking per month is much, much, much cheaper. And that's an eye-opener. So we have this power meter. So during our demonstrations, we bring power meters to explain to people, look, this is how much power you use. For this soup, we used it 28 minutes, and it will cost you about half a kilowatt hour. How much is your fee per kilowatt hour? That's in rural Cambodia, about 15 cents. So this meal will cost you 7 cents. And then we have the same meal prepared on charcoal. And then you will see very obviously the price difference. So that's an eye-opener. Now, Bastiaan, that is all good and well, but does it work? Because we want to see the results. Well, we did an independent survey with a control group and a treatment group. Health concerns raised from 40 to 86%. So people were really prioritizing health after being exposed to smoke-free village. Traditional stoves as the primary stove dropped from 62 to 39%. And in the control group, 38% used a primary stove as a clean one, and after it was 60%. So these are very convincing data that show a very strong shift in clean cooking, only on the basis of behavioral change. We don't give subsidy, we don't give RBF, we have our hands on our back and we only explain the situation, and then it's up to the villagers to respond. There are within our program 3 units of analyzers that we use to evaluate the cooking transition, because the cooking transition is a complicated beast. One of them is the stoves. Here you see 3 lines. The upper line is LPG. So these are the number of cook stoves that we see among all the households over the period of time of implementation. The blue one is electricity stoves, and the red one is perhaps the most important. Because that's what's happening in Cambodia is that the ceramic stoves are most popular and they're not replaced. So within a year or year and a half, your ceramic stove breaks down. And what we see here is that after that it's removed, but not repurchased. So that's a very strong indicator that there is less smoke. Then households, we are seeing that 83% of the households now own a electric or an LPG stove. 65% use it as primarily, and 42 even exclusively, which is of course the essence of clean cooking. These are the G-side groups that I earlier mentioned. The all groups you can see sometimes a bump because we add new villages, so then the percentage go down. But overall, you see a very steep curve in having clean cook stoves, whereas for the ID4, that curve is a little bit slower, but it also gets there, and for women-led households and for people with disabilities as well. So that's why we are very shy on subsidies. 5 minutes, right? Oh, 10 minutes. Okay, good. So we're very shy on subsidies. So we're going now into a process to experiment a little bit with subsidies, not so much on cook stoves, but perhaps on the fuel, that we say, well, for this month and the next month, we will pay your electricity bill. So the scare of the electricity bill is taken away. After that, of course, we will stop, or maybe we take a cap, a maximum $20. But just to give people confidence that cooking on electricity is not expensive. So these are the household level, and then the smoke-free villages is very important. Because if I am cooking clean, but you are not cooking clean and you're my neighbor, I'm still exposed to the smoke. So just like with open defecation, you have to do it collectively. So it is not an individual choice. It needs to come from a norm shift within the village that cooking on wood is a dirty thing to do. And it's not modern and it's not cool. So that's why we are monitoring the ownership of villages, and we monitor the primary stove usage in villages. And once the 85% is reached, there is a milestone. So when villages are reaching 85% of their households is primarily using LPG and electricity, then we have a declaration of smoke-free. So then you're a smoke-free village. It's a bit the same type of approach as they applied in the water and sanitation and open defecation-free villages. So there are 3 villages, like owning a clean cook stove, 85%, using clean cook stove primarily and exclusively. And you can see that the blue ones are the villages, the percentage of villages that are using primarily or exclusively clean fuels. And the other, the green and the gray, are still in process. Well, why it works? I think one of the strong points is that this is not an experiment that has been started from scratch, but we use the evidence from the water and sanitation. We also went back to the same villages, so it was not new faces. So it was still like, hello, we're SNV. We worked with you for the last 5 years on open defecation. There was a huge appreciation from the local governments about this initiative. So we said, let's now talk about cooking, and maybe next year we are going back and we say, let's talk about plastic, or let's talk about domestic violence-free villages. You know, so you can stack the topics in a similar way. So like I said, the network, especially from the subnational government, the ownership is so strong. And that makes me feel it's worthwhile any difficulties in my work, because if you see how much impact and results we have on those villages, that is very, very meaningful. Can smoke-free village work everywhere? No, probably not. In Mozambique, for instance, you see that at a certain point, the opportunity is not there. There is no infrastructure. There is not enough cash in villages to invest in clean cook stove. But let's not hold that back. And especially in Asia, where we have 1.7 billion people that are having not the access that we would like to see. I bet that a very large share of them, they do have expendable income. There is infrastructure, there is electricity. So there is a huge opportunity in Asia to scale this and to replicate this. And I see the ADB already thinking like, what may this cost? It's only between $1 and $2 per person. So what you would need is not an arm and a leg. It is not a super expensive affair. It is scalable, it is doable, it only needs a clever design, a clever social construct, and it's possible. Culture, we talked about that before, about taste. Of course, there is already, Eddie mentioned, but in the context of Cambodia, there is a very strong willingness to embrace a modern lifestyle. This whole story has been put in a NDEF publication online. Here you can scan the report or you can see the results later. Perhaps you have heard about the summit on clean cooking in Africa. So I was very pleased about initiatives to do a similar initiative in Asia. This summit led to, I think, an incredible commitment of about $2 or $3 billion from the private sector, from countries like Norway, France, other bilaterals. And I think it's time, if Africa can generate that level of commitment on clean cooking, I think the time is ripe to do something similar in Asia. What do you think? Yeah, agree? Okay, then let's collaborate. Thank you. This was my presentation.
Thank you. Thank you, speaker. So actually, we are going to have now the panel discussions. So may we now call upon all the speakers, Dr. Liu, Bastian, Michelle, if we can, Simon, please. Um, this is going to be moderated by Dr. Norman. Michelle.
stuff, but how we can really convince both, to the actual, low hanging, the community, actual user side, because, and then also the decision maker, where we can really tap it, but the thing is there any mechanism, or it is a holistic approach, but whether there can be any approach that individual institution with a different responsibility that can be done. I would like to give you a question on that. From the ADB side, it was easy to say that I said a 4.7 billion is the total per year portfolio of the ADB. That doesn't mean that out of that fraction will we go to the clean cooking. But anyway, my mandate is, in my work, my mandate is we would like to bring it into some of this innovative clean energy technology, including renewable energy as well as energy efficiency. And together with the innovative business model, operation and maintenance, which Professor Simon mentioned about that one. And then see that if it can be really do so through the pilot project. We see the piloting, and then we do the two very simple impact evaluation. It's not even impact assessment. We see that before and after, what has it really changed in terms of socioeconomic impacts aspect assessment of the targeted participants on that one. So from that one, that is where we are moving with the e-cooking system, my part.
Okay.
So from there, that goes that direction. Then.
No. So I'm going to ask the question, but back to you.
Okay.
Okay.
Sure.
Because you have that description, and you talked about and we will measure the impact of it.
Yeah.
What is the impact that will convince you to spend the next 100 million on this subject?
Oh, that can be, because you asked me anyway. So what we estimate is we are always measuring, we said impact, but we are measuring at the outcome level. Okay, we are expecting. So we have indicators. Okay, so like Malaria one pilot projects, there is other projects that we have conducted. What we see is that what we have seen it, how much of the, those simple greenhouse gas emissions, CO2 emission reductions or through that one, we'll measure that one. But most importantly is that because of the save the time, like opportunity cost, how we can really materialize for the employment opportunities or any kind of a quality enhancement in terms of schools like that. So we see that because of the electricity, let's say, that they have better some kind of facility in the school, that they have a more learning proposals. Of course, we cannot measure and quantify and monetize at when they are grown up, and then whether they get a better job or something. But at the outcomes level, we are measuring that, and then we are showing that as the convincing material on that one.
Maybe
Ladies first.
sorry,
Otherwise it's gender balance, gender issue.
So I just want to try also to think a little bit what to ask. What make put more money in something? I think there is the pilots and demonstration has two effects. One is to convincing the government to prioritize. We don't put, at least in the World Bank, you don't put money. It's the government that asks the money for.
Right.
So that's try the convincing process. And the other one's to convincing donors. We have two groups of people that we need to convince, in the sense that so that's part
also see, because you have to look at the market segment for this clean cooking. Some of the families probably is the most vulnerable in the village. As you said, if you only have a single household with the clean cooking, it doesn't have an impact. You have to have a group of people. So that I really see the role of government, the role of like a local community and the private sector. Probably for those group of people, that's really the responsibility for the government. You know, you give them free, like, you cooking facilities, but for those people, they are capable, you know, affordable to pay this kind of services. They can, you know, pay themselves. That also give the opportunity for private sector to work with the government together. So I really see, you know, the different kind of group, you have to have a different model or different strategy to address this.
Compliment because I really like it. I think that's one of the things that we need to think.
Audience should like it.
I really like it because I think one of the most important things that we are not a group. You have different groups and they have different kind of a problem. And when you talk about the most vulnerable, we need to work with social protection. It's a social protection problem. It's not the energy problem. And deal with the social protection programs and how you have how you give this kind of subsidy, but not need to be subsidy directly. You need to think the best way to do that. That's kind of challenging as well.
Yeah, on the returns of investments, I think you can knock yourself out in modeling because we have all the data on health. There are dailies, which is a bit of an extra unit, but you can measure not only the death, but you also can measure the quality of life. We don't agree with it, but you can quantify the greenhouse gas emission reductions, right? I mean, maybe we are overthinking or overestimating. I mean, you came with 9 tons per year. I thought it was quite substantial. Let's talk about that one time. But overall, you can quantify time, which is, of course, a bit dodgy because if you save time on cooking, what does it mean? Is it every day 10 minutes or is it 1 hour? But you can quantify, I think, pretty much everything in the cooking energy space. And the 1.7 trillions that the World Bank came up with, I think out of that 1.7, at least 1.5 was health. Surprisingly, actually, we talk about a health project. So we recently engaged in an MOU with Chai, with the
how we can really move ahead with it.
I think the short answer to that is well planned is half done. So obviously taking those into consideration from the start will make it easier. But that's why I think it's also very important that when it comes to energy planning, that you consider the opportunities around integrating electric cooking into from the start, because it will of course be more difficult, like Simon highlighted, to retrofit it later. It becomes more expensive, but it really makes business sense and to integrate it from the start. Talking about pilots, and I back to the electric cooking agenda. There was an electric pressure cooker pilot we did in the outskirts of Kigali in Rwanda, and some funny co-benefits actually that one doesn't think of was when one of the mothers said that she's so happy that now when her kids come home from school in the afternoon, they can warm up their food and have a warm meal in the evening instead of eating cold. And the other interesting insight was as well that when you bring in technology to cooking through electric pressure cookers or induction stoves, suddenly you also get the men interested because there's some buttons to be pressed and some technology involved. So then even the husbands started showing some interest to cooking. So that's some reflections, Hongpeng.
Yeah, I really think Dr. Nam's question for this service network and the maintenance compared to traditional cooking styles or cooking facility. Like I remember, when we started with the solar home system, one of the key issues is you really need to provide this technical support, because for the household, even the small kind of technical issues, they will give up to use it. So I really think if we think about this pilot, the facilities, how you build up this service network, you really need a capacity building, training for technicians.
Really important, and I really believe you have a lot to learn, but we can the pilot, because the pilot have all this problem of network effect, right? So looking at systematic approach, there is the planning part, but there is this idea that we need to include cooking inside of the energy system as a whole. And you don't think about the energy system just one part of it usually. You think at the private sector, you think about the partners. So that's a little, I guess that's the big challenge, because when you think about the energy system as a whole, we need to work together. A lot of people need to coordinate and work together, and I think that's one of the challenge. And also I think that because of this idea of system and leverage the private sector, it's on the base of the challenge of this how to solve the clean cooking. It's also important that the different players have a kind of roadmap to achieve something. And you should not think about 2030. I still have hope that we can achieve big things at 2030. I think you cannot just give up on our mission of 2030, but thinking on 2050 as well. Because when you think about systematic, we need to be think about 2050 as well.
Well, yeah, I think it is better that, if there are any questions, because the whole idea of having this workshop, deep dive workshop that we organized for during this 19th Asian Clean Energy Forum was actually we wanted all this participating institution to really take an action to really go out with a practical pilot or whatever, the planning as well, all kinds of things. We really want to see implement, deploy whatever that we thought, and then we would like to report back to you at the later stage, maybe not before 2030, maybe in 2050, our next generation might think that 19th ASF, they talked about these things and they all went out. And then, after, 49 ASF, they might come back and then there was something was done at that time, So this is the whole idea that we had at this workshop. So we would like to ask you some questions that someone who is raising. We would like to get your questions and then we try to respond. So it would be good if you point someone left to me, second or third, and then your question is addressed to.
Yeah.
Because if you ask me something, then I will not accept that question.
Okay.
Okay?
I ask everybody.
Oh.
I'm seeing from ADB environmental safeguard. I just want to ask, why are you focusing on electrifying instead of cleaning cooking or decarbonizing? The reason I'm asking is to use the electricity to heat is not the most efficient way of using electricity, as we know. And so we could have used, say, solar energy, renewable energy, or biomass, or even other more, innovative technology to replace traditional cooking. So that's my question.
I think we work in the least cost perspective. That's the way we do it. The question of the e-cooking is that there is a lot of misalignment of incentive and cost and price. And what comes of e-cooking is that this need to think systematically. That's not done, because when you put cookie completely separate of the energy system as a whole, you have different kind of Frankenstein incentives that actually block this possibility. So it's not about choosing one, it's just to make sure that the best choice is taken account.
Since it is I will just add to that, sorry, sir. Because you're from ADB, so I will just give you my response on that one from the ADB side. Look, solar or all this kind of, we are converting everything, this energy to, electric unit or thermal unit. Now, what you're saying is why you convert electricity and then you use the electricity, which you might have less thermal value. If it is coming from the renewable, thermal value as well as electric value is no difference in case of solar. That's the first. Second one is if you're going to the why not LNGs or LPGs, then it's different because this is cleaner fuel than the other thing. The other one is thermal, using the thermal of the solar. That is you all know that renewable energy that we are facing a lot of issues or a lot of challenges in terms of the cost, which she was mentioning, least cost option there is because it is intermittent energy technology. So you needed storage. You need a thermal storage to cook it whenever you need it. So, and you may be able to cook during the morning or lunchtime, but in the evening, you need a thermal storage. That you have to add it to the cost. And then the caloric value of that is compared to the fossil or electricity a lot less in that sense. That's why we are saying that. And another option why we're going out with e-cooking is the first, it is one of the modern technology among the clean cooking because they're widely using the LPGs or something. And then this is some fossil component there. We try to go with the most innovative, advanced technology. That is the reason why we're going ahead with the e-cooking. We are focusing on that. I hope it. Is it okay?
Yeah, Reggie Pillai from India Smart Grid Forum. It's the poor and the low income community, rural households are the ones which are using firewood and charcoal and all that for cooking. As part of the rural electrification, when we give connection to all these households, typically start with 150 watt, 200 watt, 300 watt. You can't do any electric cooking at 300 watt. As part of one of our rural electrification program in India, about 28 million new connections were given free by funded by Government of India. They are all 250 in some states 300 watt. So we've been arguing that if they have to do electric cooking, minimum 1.5 kilowatt should be the minimum connection in the to be given, and for strengthening the grid. And we are arguing that add the cooling load. People all need some air conditioning or air cooling because the temperature is very high. So minimum rural electrification should be with 3 kilowatt to 5 kilowatt connection, and calculate the grid strengthening cost in the entire socializing the cost. We have given recently in India, all across India, almost 98% of the geography, city gas distribution licenses issued, but nobody is giving household connection, because one connection, piped gas connection to one household, even in urban area, it costs more than $300 per connection. Whereas for a 3 kilowatt, grid strengthening is far less than $100 per households. So my suggestion or question to all the people working on the electric cooking side is that should argue for this grid strengthening and giving 3 kilowatt connection. Otherwise, programs are not going to be successful.
Well, I will just go for that. That is very correct. This is exactly the same issue that we had it in the. That's why I had a discussion with the regulatory body in the Mongolia for the discos and everything. You're absolutely true. It requires the 3 kilowatt to 5 kilowatt to be able to implement the e-cooking. That is very true. But once you're not connecting only distribution, I mean the line, why only to the 3-5 kilowatt? Just because of cooking, because you have to use, as you said, for cooling as well as the lighting and everything. So there has to be that one. So this is the somewhere that, we have issues and challenges as well. So there's somebody is saying that, okay, then there is a distributed renewable energy system. Why don't you do the, just like a one distributed, meaning it's not decentralized, it's not grid, there is no grid. So you're doing your own, like a solar home system like that. So distributed renewables that we do, but that should not be done. It is a completely different cost calculation from the e-cooking required and the whole entire system.
Well, just we have a little sign here saying our time is up, so we're going to be brief. But yes, your example is exactly what we were talking about integrated energy planning, because unfortunately for you in India, you had a very successful subsidized LPG. That in political mentality terms, oh, that's great. We've sorted that problem. Over here, we have the electricity planners. Oh, how can we get a solution to rural access very easily? Let's drop the connection. And you're right that choice made sort of 5-10 years ago, I guess, now affects things where we are now. And that's why we're saying, let's at least now in integrated energy planning, inclusive of cooking needs, so that we don't make the same sort of mistakes again. Sorry, that's not very helpful for you who has to retrofit your entire rural access supply. But anyway, right, so we have time's up.
You probably can see your
Oh, okay. Hong Peng wants me to talk about well, there's first the standalone solar systems have dropped dramatically in price, and probably will continue to do so. So in Malawi, you can do a solar e-cooking system, including storage, because we were talking about the solar thermal, limits when you can use that electricity. The Malawians use lithium titanate batteries, which are extremely durable. They have massive longevity on their cycles. And so that $200 basically buys 15 to 20 years of your cooking. That's being rolled out in an area where people are collecting wood. So it's not a direct substitution for, sorry, I can see Net is looking at me because the time is up. But, it has attracted people to actually find that 200 with credit, obviously pay as you go, and eventually we will subsidize it with carbon further to get it down to less than 100. But nevertheless, people are putting their hands in their pockets and paying for it instead of the free wood because of all the welfare and life quality benefits. They can see that it's that much easier to cook. All these stories about the kids, having hot meals when they previously didn't, that's all manifesting itself there. Men getting involved. That's why it's combined with solar irrigation pumping, because the men get interested in the irrigation side, and then the women use that as leverage to get a integrated solar standalone pumping e-cooking thing.
Is there any other questions? It is too late.
One more? There's one.
Just one more. Just one very quick, simple question if you have.
Yes, this is very quick, and this is specifically for Filipinos. I'm JP from GMA News. Electric stoves and cookers may result in higher electricity bills, especially with costly electricity in the Philippines and a potential energy shortage in the Philippines. With concerns about the rising cost of LPG as well, a common cooking fuel among Filipinos. Really, what is the best sustainable and affordable cooking alternative for ordinary Filipinos? Thank you.
None of us are Filipino, but I can tell you from our wider global experience that there are new energy efficient appliances. So most Filipinos probably have a rice cooker, electric rice cooker. Those are very efficient because they combine insulation with heating, but they're sometimes limited because you can't do frying, and they're a deep pot, so you can't do some of the more exotic foods. But there are new multi-cookers on the market that basically can do those extra features that give you your entire menu range. Yes, of course it will use electricity, but your choice is substituting for the gas, which, as you said, is price volatile and going up and down. So it's about switching what you pay for your cooking at the moment to more and more energy efficient appliances which are drawing on electricity. And all our experience in every country we work with is that energy efficient electric cooking is cheaper in urban locations, urban and connected locations, than paying for charcoal, LPG, kerosene, even ethanol. Okay.
Great. I think, with that, thank you very much for all the speakers, as well as the panelists, as well as whatever, all around the player here. And thank you very much for coming, and also the nice presentation, as well as the, audience participants. Thank you for coming. And then we'll stop here because we have about 10 minutes delay, but I think we'll go ahead with it. Thank you very much. And then I think the Lunch is just directly opposite. There is a podium. You can also have lunch down there. Okay, great. Thank you.